So for everybody who doesn't know, Billy has actually been on all 3 of our Portal to Ascension Summit. So this is the 3rd year in a row. And I feel like you should be at every single one now.
Hey, man, I would appreciate it, man. I'm looking forward to it. I really look forward to your events. They're very professional, very well organized. You've got some of the top speakers in the world at all times. I don't know how you do it, man. It's tough. You're really plugged in, and it's so great to be a part of something that's so high quality and that people really get something out of it every time they come to one of your events. And now, obviously, we're in the virtual world. They get something out of it, and that's the most important part. Is what can you take away from this, from this event, from this conference, from this workshop or lecture? And it always seems to me, I even get something out of it. I know a lot of people are getting great information from your work, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, bro. Feeling is 100% mutual, everything that you do. And I kind of want to have a conversation about all the hats that you do wear, you know what I mean? Because you do a lot of things, man. Like the First Class Space Agency is its own entire thing that many people within the conscious community haven't even started getting into that level of mainstream disclosure, right? And then you have the anomaly, the anomalies that you're searching for. But I wanted to preface this whole conversation with something that I discovered this morning. My wife, Sol, she found this article from Northrop Grumman, right?
Northrop Grumman, yeah.
Yeah. So I want to start with this and kind of get your feedback from it and go into some anomalies, but I do want you to kind of take this conversation where you want, because the intention of this is unity. We see this world full of division. So here's the article. It was actually an ad basically sponsored by Northrop Grumman, and the ad says, hidden in plain sight are invisible aliens among us. And there's a video here of this ET in basically like New York walking and phasing out in and out of reality around all these people walking down a New York street. You open up their page, and they have this whole article about how they're now finding that silicon-based organisms can actually be a reality. And there's this part here that really stood out. And I want you to kind of talk about this and talk about drip disclosure, and we can move forward from there. Yeah. So it says, interstellar rest stop. What if invisible aliens living among us in shadow biospheres or using different building blocks? What if they already visited and aren't coming back? What if they're not alien at all? As noted by Business Insider, it's possibly that interstellar travelers visited Earth billions of years ago where their own star system was close to ours. Maybe they watched the first organic molecules form or walked among the dinosaurs. Perhaps they accidentally nudged an asteroid towards Earth on their way out of town. Other experts like Harvard's AV wondered if strange interstellar objects like the asteroid you talk about, the Oumuamua, the first known interstellar object to pass through our solar system, was actually of alien origin. And just this last part here. Here we go. He posts that seeming existence of advanced technology without alien operators could suggest a future in which humanity discovers time travel. Humans regularly visit the past and occasionally make the mistake of letting their advanced craft get noticed. Since they're physically and visually human, any crash landings or future people infiltrations would go unnoticed. In effect, they're temporal visitors, aliens by eons rather than elements. So what's your take on that? That's very interesting, because they talk about the asteroid coming to Earth. They talk about phasing in and out of reality and time travel. What do you think?
You know what? I think it's a little bit of everything you just mentioned. That's how incredible the story really is. Let's start off with, for example, the visitors that could be coming here, and I think they have been coming here for many, many eons. The record of these people, of these ancient Pleiadian, they originated from the Pleiades and spread out to the Orion, they spread out to Aldebaran, Epsilon, Boötis, Sirius, the Dog Star. They spread out all over the galaxy, and some of them ended up coming here to mine this solar system, not just Earth, but this entire solar system for resources. And then, some starting a breakaway civilization on this planet. And at the time that they came to this planet, people were already here. They didn't create human beings. What they did was they genetically modified the existing hominid that was on this planet, which would have been our cousin, therefore then modifying them and creating what we call a Homo sapien. But creating a being from scratch, that really didn't happen according to ancient tablets from around the world, not just from one source. But I believe that they were here. And then when they got here, there were also these other people here, this culture called the Ubaid culture, Ubaid, originating out of Iraq, and they had an entire kingdom there. And these Ubaid statuettes have been found. There's hundreds of them showing kings, queens. They had a monarchical type society. And I even have two of these in my own personal collection. One of the reptilian women, hominid women, is actually breastfeeding a baby. And the other one is like a male prince. So they had these people that were here, these reptilian type people that were here long before the Anunnaki ever arrived on this planet. The Anunnaki more or less resemble more of like what we look like. And the reason why is because when I went to Australia at the beginning of 2020, right before this COVID-19 stuff happened, I went out into the outback and met with some Aboriginal elders. And the history that they have, handed down from generation to generation for thousands of years, is that people were seeded on this planet by the Pleiadians. And my main reason for going there was to go out into the outback and find these hieroglyphs, and not find them, have them take me to these hieroglyphs that they've already discovered. And there's hieroglyphs there that are called Pleiadian glyphs, which have not been deciphered. And there's also another set of hieroglyphs on the opposite side of this makeshift temple that go back thousands of years. That's Proto-Egyptian. And the Egyptians were coming here for 5,000, going there for 5,000 years to visit with the Aboriginal people to gain wisdom and knowledge. So the story is really, really deep. And these Pleiadian glyphs have never been fully deciphered, but they also do point out and show the Pleiadian star system. So it's really an amazing story. So then you move forward into the whole Great Flood situation. Was it a directed asteroid? Was it just a natural geological disaster? According to the text, it seems as if it was decreed that it was going to happen naturally. They had the capability of moving this object and not letting it hit the earth. But at that time, Enlil, who was the king of the earth, one of the Anunnaki/Atlantean rulers, decided that he would like the whole thing wiped out and we start fresh again. And it says that they actually left and went to their sky palace and watched from space the entire earth be destroyed by this gigantic asteroid situation. And they wept and they moaned and they cried because their creation had been destroyed. And then in the Emerald Tablets is when, the opening scene in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth is where the waters are receding finally. And people who did survive are coming out of the caves and so forth. And there's some barbarians and everything else because civilization had taken a real hard dive. And then they go and they go to the area of land of Kem, the ancient land of Kem before it was called Egypt, to rebuild civilization, kickstart civilization. And then when fast forward, you can have time travels. Time travel to me is a very real possibility, even according to most theoretical physicists. And I think that the only thing that I think is the grandfather paradox is probably not accurate to where, if you go back and kill your grandfather, you could have never been born. I think that when you go back in time, you then transpose the actual universal line. You move out of one universe into a parallel universe, therefore allowing you to go back and see yourself, see your grandfather, kill your grandfather, and still be alive. Because I think every time you travel back in time or even forward in time, you actually shift into a whole nother reality.
Yeah, that sounds like more feasible that you create a new timeline. But then that would kind of like blow the lid off any possible future timeline that has to do with correcting a timeline. It would just be 100% to explore.
Yeah, you'd be exploring. You couldn't really directly affect any particular timeline because every time you move in time, you end up on a different parallel universe.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned the Pleiadians, and I've heard I don't know if you heard the book Prism of Lyra by Lisa Royale. It's a great book. And then also Bringers of the Dawn, right? So in both of those books, they talk about the Pleiadians being the original Earthlings, right? Yeah. And you've kind of just mentioned that here, that they were here first. So is there any evidence or information on what we looked like before the Pleiadians here? Were we sentient, or were we not sentient until we had that genetic spark?
Now, we were already sentient beings. I think even more intelligent than we are right now. They look like us, or we look like them, because Homo sapiens sapien, which we are now, are the new kids on the block. We basically look like them. They had various different races. They had white, black, yellow, red, brown. They had all the different skin tone colors, various different looks. But even not only just Homo sapien or hominid looking like us, but also even a little bit more alien looking, Lillarians and Assyrians. They had these very different faces. There were some people who almost looked like cats in a way, you know, not exactly, but very close. So they had this variation of so many different types of hominid with different looks, and a vast majority of them look just like we do.
Right. Was the whole thing with Enlil, was that another time that we were genetically mutated, or did it happen multiple times after the original time when the Pleiadians came here? And were the Pleiadians directly responsible for the first mutation?
The first mutation is potentially the Pleiadians doing. And the reason why is because the adjustment to this Earth's gravity, this Earth's atmosphere and everything else required a slight genetic modification. However, I think our pineal glands were bigger, our skulls were bigger, which means our brains were bigger. I think that we were much more intelligent, more in tune with the Schumann resonant frequency of the Earth, and more in tune with each other. Maybe things like telepathy and clairvoyance were just standard parts of our normal physiology.
Yeah.
Where then the Anunnaki came and they said, we need to disconnect all of this stuff. This is too much. And then that's where we have the junk DNA now. They disconnected a lot of our DNA from the nodes. They shrunk our pineal gland, shrunk our brain size, and then they genetically modified us a little bit later and took away our lifespan. We were still living for thousands of years. Even in biblical texts, you can find human beings living for a very, very long time. But at the Tower of Babel incident, they decided to cut back our time even more to only a maximum of 120 years.
So would that be like also the time of the Epic of Gilgamesh, Noah's Ark? Because there was also stories that before that we were living for a long time.
Yes, exactly. Noah's Ark, the Epic of Gilgamesh is the true, full story of Noah's Ark, which obviously predates the Bible by thousands of years. Up until that point there, it was, we were living for 900, 1,000, 1,100 years. You hear these crazy lifespans. When you get to the, shortly after you get to the Tower of Babel situation, is where all of a sudden people coming together, working in unison to build this tower to the heavens. And Enlil had come back from wherever he was at. In the Bible, he's known as Yahweh. And he realized that no matter what these people set out their heart to do, they can achieve it. And he says this, that's made it into the Bible. So he said, my seed shall not abide in man forever. His year shall be 120. So he literally at that point decided to make a new genetic modification. Let's take away the lifespan. They're living too long. If they live this long, they're going to get too smart. They're going to figure this out. They're going to come together. Then he did something else. He split us up and moved us all around the planet, changed our languages, and changed the races. This is why there's a 2% variation in race, which could not happen through a natural evolution, through a natural macro evolution. It would take many more millions of years to get to where we are now in terms of me being a black person, you being a Caucasian, or you actually Hispanic, all these different variations take a very long time. But that explains the 2% variance. Genealogists are now saying, geneticists, are saying, this seems like a directed thing that happened. And when you read the Emerald Tablets of Oak, you discover that he sent his people all around the planet to kickstart new civilizations. And when they got to those sections, they branded the people that they ruled over with a genetic brand. And that's how you have Asians and Caucasians and Africans and everything else. It's because of these genetic branded people. Like, these are my people here. These yellow people are mine. These red people are mine. These black people are mine. And black people are mentioned many, many times in the Sumerian tablets. It's many, probably over a dozen times. It's easier to find. It's not even a hard thing to find. But you discover that there were many races on the planet as well. And you discover that the Anunnaki themselves were many races, even one of them marrying a woman from a different planet.
Mm. Is that in the 7 tablets of creation?
That in the Enuma Elish and the 7 tablets, you get some of that. And then also you get the other part of it in the Atrahasis epic.
Okay, cool. So it looks like to me that, you were into this information. You've explained in past interviews how you kind of got into it, but then you wanted to figure out how to be practical with it. And I feel like looking for space anomalies and also having the first class space agency where we can travel to these places is a part of that. Would you agree? Is that kind of how you went into the space anomalies? And then maybe you can talk about some of the anomalies you've discovered.
Yeah, with the space anomalies, how I actually got into it was, a weird thing happened to me around 2010 where it's hard to talk about, but I actually had a visitation. I wasn't abducted by aliens or anything like that. But in my house, there were 2 gray aliens. Now, what does this have to do with finding anomalies? Well, all I could tell you is they didn't speak to me telepathically, but I did have a very weird situation, a very weird experience where my brain was shaking in my skull, and then they left. Now, what that means is after that happened, this phrase was in my mind, worldwide telescope. And it happened, it just kept coming back thousands of times. So I went on my computer and I looked up on excite.com because google.com wasn't the most popular back then.
Excite.
Yeah, and I typed in worldwide telescope, and the first thing that popped up was worldwidetelescope.org, which is still in business today. It was a software program back then. You had to download the software, install it on your computer, and then you can actually see all the space probe data from every mission that's ever gone out into space. And it's incredible. It's partially funded by Microsoft and tax dollars. And the first thing that I saw was Mars panoramas, Mars, and I went to Mars panoramas. I said, okay, whatever. And then I clicked on Opportunity Rover. I went in there, and it gives you the perspective as if you're looking through the actual rover on the landscape. It's a phenomenal thing. But what hit me was right away, I started seeing things that didn't belong in this Martian desert. Objects, structures, things that looked like they were out of place objects. And so it just kept me digging deeper and deeper and deeper. So I started collecting these images and saving them and screenshotting them and cataloging them. Eventually, I ran into a few other people on Facebook that were doing the same thing. They had came across these same images and they were cataloging. So we formed the United Family of Anomaly Hunters so that we can really organize the proper way. And between all 14 of us now, we've downloaded well over 1 million images from all space agencies combined. And we've cataloged about now close to 60,000 space anomalies in our solar system.
Wow.
Yeah.
Since 2010, you've categorized that many.
Yeah.
Is there any other organization kind of doing that, or because I never really
Not really. We're the biggest one. There are some individuals here and there, but we are literally the biggest organization. That our stuff has been on ancient aliens. It's been on ancient civilizations. It's been on Beyond Belief. It's been on Discovery Channel. It's been on mainstream news. It's picked up stuff. CNN, NBC, Fox. They even picked up some of our images and talked about them on mainstream TV.
So what are some key discoveries that you think you may have found that connects, let's talk about maybe the Martian civilization that existed there. What have you found over there?
Well, when you read the Enuma Elish, you discover that there were these working class Anunnaki on Mars called the Igigi. Now, these Igigi are the angels that fell from heaven to earth because they left Mars and came to earth to go to battle against God, who at that time was Enlil, because the workload was too heavy. They weren't getting a break. They didn't even have, their biggest complaint was they didn't have women on Mars. So they ended up mating with the daughters of men. This is Genesis 6. They ended up mating with the daughters of men and so forth. And they took some women back to Mars with them because the agreement was made that they would forego the battle if they had a break. So that's when Enki said, we're going to genetically modify the existing hominid on this planet and create a worker race, and then taking the load off of you guys. And you guys can just oversee and run like that. And that's what happened. But so there was a concurrent civilization running both on Mars and Earth at the same time. The one on Mars was slightly more advanced than the one on Earth because it had a little bit higher level of technology. And when I started reading these ancient tablets and started looking at these anomalies, I started realizing, wow, this is evidence of this Atlantean civilization that wasn't just on Earth. It wasn't just a ring city. It was a global civilization on Earth, and it was an interplanetary civilization making its way from Earth to the moon, all the way to Mars.
Wow, that's amazing. And we're actually going to do a space anomaly conference together, right? Which is going to be next year. I'm just going to, before we get into some questions from people, just show everybody here. We're going to do a space lunar anomalies online conference in which Billy is going to be on it. And then you're going to also recommend another anomaly hunter, right? Mm-hmm. And this one is going to be all days, 8 hours, with just us basically going over as many anomalies as possible and then dissecting what the theories are behind them, right? Yeah. So let's get into a couple of questions here. Carol is asking, do you agree with Madame Blavatsky's timetable for the root races? You familiar with that?
For the root races. Yeah, I've read that. I've studied that and I've read it. It's pretty interesting. Now, to me, there are some things that are valid about it and make a lot of sense chronologically. And there are things that kind of leave a few holes. But overall, I believe that it's pretty interesting. I think it's a great, great theory that should be researched and investigated a little bit more.
Is it possible to travel back or forward in time when dreaming?
When dreaming, now that's a very good question. I believe that dreams are a lot more real than the reality that you have when you're in your awakened state, in my personal opinion. Now, when I went and studied remote viewing with Major Ed Dames, who you know, they've made movies about this man, you know, men staring at goats and everything else. But I learned that mind is outside of space and time. And so you get into this semi-awake, semi-daydream state during a remote view, and where you send your mind, instead of doing an astral projection where you try to send your entire spirit somewhere, you only send the consciousness somewhere. And you can send it backwards and forwards in time. So in that case, I would have to say the answer to that question is yes.
Mm-hmm. When we were living for thousands plus years, do you know anything about what we were eating and drinking?
Good question. Very good question. I believe that the majority of the people that were living in those time frames were eating a very balanced diet of plant-based foods and small amounts of meat. When you look at the history of those times and you read some of those ancient texts, if you read inside of the Torah, if you read inside of the biblical text, the Quran, in those texts, which are a little bit newer than some of the more ancient texts, but even when you go to the Sumerian tablets, you see the same consistency of majority of plant-based. Now, some people were eating all plant-based and some people were eating a mixed diet. As a matter of fact, here's something interesting to answer that question. You look at the Garden of Eden incident where Cain killed his brother, right? Cain killed Abel. One of them was presenting God with vegetables, the first harvest and fruits. And the other one was presenting God with only meat. Okay, and the reason why Cain killed Abel, he got jealous of his brother because his brother's offering was getting more credibility or more anointing, quote unquote, from God, who was really Enlil. Enlil was eating that food. In other words, he was eating that food. He didn't like the meat so much. So, so he was a plant-based guy, probably, you know. So you see this weird situation where a guy got killed because his God was a vegan or something. I don't know.
That's hilarious. Enlil was probably a vegan.
Yeah, you know, but it's really interesting. So there was a balance. There was some people were eating meat. In the Sumerian tablets, it talks about where Enlil and Enki are interacting with one of the kings, and they had not fashioned the lamb yet. So they actually genetically created, lambs are genetically created, or maybe they brought DNA from their planet and then, you know, kickstarted a brand new race of lambs on Earth or whatever. But some of the stuff that they brought here from their planet, they then allowed to develop and grow and mature on Earth, like marijuana, which also the lamb, of course. They bought barley to teach humans how to brew beer, and the instructions and the ingredients to brew beer are in 6,000-year-old Sumerian tablets. You know, so it's really interesting stuff.
Yeah, I mean, well, we could really honestly talk about this forever because every time you say something, another question comes up, you know?
Yeah.
So we have Christine Webb here saying, could you talk about the Ubaid people from Iraq?
The Ubaid people from Iraq are very interesting people. They had established a civilization on this planet thousands of years before the Anunnaki arrived. The first Anunnaki arrived on this planet, which developed the Atlantean civilization. So they were here. Now we've discovered or found, you know, hundreds of these Ubaid statuettes, and they depict kings, queens, monarchy style, you know, setup. You can even see workers and people of lower class. They had kingdoms here on Earth, and some of these kingdoms have been discovered. Some of these really dilapidated, run down. They almost look like mounds of sand now, but they're really ancient structures that these Ubaid cultures used to live in, and had their temples and their kings and everything else, their kingdoms. So they were really here. And now they were here before the Anunnaki even arrived. So, there's one tablet, I just can't remember exactly which tablet it was, that mentions these people existing on this planet. And they were a thriving civilization. Nobody really knows exactly what happened and what caused them to disappear. Did they go underground? Were they wiped out? Nobody really knows. It's not really clear as to what happened to them, but they were a thriving humanoid reptilian type of a civilization. They stood upright. They were bilateral, bipedal hominids. They just had the skin and head of reptilians.
Wow. So we only have a few minutes, but I want to ask another question and then get into some tools for empowerment, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, certain things have happened, like, for example, Tom DeLonge's disclosure with all those officials that people consider a smoking gun, that this is a reality, you know, like Robert Bigelow saying we have extraterrestrial craft in Vegas at one of their facilities, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then there's those that, you know, we're finding all these crafts, and there's people like Clifford Stone that talk about crash retrieval teams, but the evidence of actual bodies, ET bodies, at these crash sites is very minimal. So do you feel that are there any smoking guns to you that really blows the lid off the fact that this is a reality, these ETs exist, that, you know, the mainstream people that maybe are doubting it and skeptics could actually research and find something out in?
You know, it's so tough because some of the evidence is ambiguous, and now the Pentagon has come forward, the Navy has come forward and admitted to the fact that these alien vehicles exist, and that they're in possession of alien vehicles. They're in possession of vehicles not of this world, is the exact terminology used by the Pentagon. I think just last month or the month before last, they've now come and shown the radar images of them trying to trace and track UFOs moving at incredible speed, 6,000 miles an hour, making 90-degree turns and everything else. Where a lot of evidence can be found of these these UFOs exist is in the old NASA footage. A lot of the old NASA footage was recorded on VHS tapes, unedited, unobfuscated, and it's up on YouTube, where you see craft piloted not by human beings are hovering around the International Space Station, hovering around the space shuttles, hovering around space debris. There's one incident called the Tether incident. Look up the Tether incident, where we released a 4-mile-long tether in space, and we electrified it. And as soon as we electrified it, the cameras that were pointing at it were in a multi-spectrum mode. And in multi-spectrum, we were able to see these gigantic UFOs. One of the UFOs crossed over this tether. And what's important about that, it gave us the ability to measure it. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. It must have been the size of, I think, 3 or 4 football fields is what the statement was. Massive, massive objects. So, you know, it's really incredible, man. We got some stuff up there that's massive. And these old NASA videos from the ISS, International Space Station, are really, to me, the smoking gun for the evidence that something's going on.
Yeah, and you know, so, like, from what I'm researching, I feel like we're the biggest light show in the universe, that all these different beings have donated DNA here, and they're kind of observing the way things are going to evolve. So it's so interesting that we're not just seeing it everywhere. So it's definitely got to be a frequency game, right? We can't see things because of the frequency shift, but also these beings, ultra-terrestrials, whatever, are really good at keeping themselves hidden, right?
Oh yeah.
There's one thing.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is the government. The one that does slip over, there's government, you know, I mean, Clifford Stone was sent to Vietnam to retrieve a crash of a UFO. You know what I mean? So I think that's probably what's going on. Now, let's talk about the intention for this event is to create unity, to create something epic and ripples in consciousness, you know, for months and years to come, but really for the whole of this year, because 2020 has been really intense for us. So I would love for you to get into, because, you know, you're not only doing this work, but you implement it, integrate it into your own lifestyle. Mm-hmm. What are certain things that we could do right now to focus our energy on what keeps us united, one, and then to keep our energy up and high during these times?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, there's so much negativity being exposed, and I don't want to say it's new negativity, because it's not new. It's always been happening. It's just that with the advance of technology now, it's becoming more obvious. So it's getting to us a lot faster. We don't have to wait to get home to see the 8 o'clock news to find out what happened in our neighborhood today. We can see it within instant seconds, milliseconds on our cell phone. And so we're getting too much information. So the main thing that you can do, and I had to do it myself, is to unplug a little bit. You know, try to unplug from areas of social media that may be showing these horrific things, or things that are really altering your physiology. You know, so at one point, obviously, with all the shootings and the killings and everything else by police against people and everything else happening, it got me so worked up And I was getting on videos and talking about it as well and addressing it because obviously my father was a victim of police brutality. But I realized I had gotten to a point where I became completely crazed, which is totally unlike me. It's very hard to get me out of my zen. I mean, it's really hard. It takes a very long, put it this way, I haven't raised my voice to yell at anybody in almost 20 years. That's how hard, that's how zen. You know, I've never yelled at my kids. I never beat my kids. So it takes a lot. But when I noticed that I was getting crazed over this situation and with all the police brutality and everything else and all the negativity and the racism and stuff I thought was going on, I realized I had to pull back. I had to get my brain-heart coherence back. And I had to start talking to myself, saying positive affirmations, thinking about things positive in my life. What am I grateful for? Okay, thinking about things that make me happy, and then also what things can I do right now that are going to make me feel better, that's going to make me happy, okay? And I started doing that to get myself back reeled in, get my physiology, get my brain-heart coherence back on track, back in alignment, get my meditation game back up. I noticed that my meditation was slipping. The more angry I got and the more distressed I got at what was going on in the what we call the real world, the more my meditation life was slipping and backsliding. I was like, wow. And the less I meditated, the more agitated I seemed to be getting. So I had to increase my meditation, get back into meditation, focusing on two types of meditation. One is my cosmic meditation, where I literally see a bowl in my mind and I see a hand taking all of my thoughts out of my bowl till the bowl is empty. Now, it's almost impossible. Some people might, I can't get it completely empty, but I can get it almost empty. And when I get to that point, I allow cosmic energy to fill that bowl. And I usually do that for about 30, 35 minutes, sometimes 40 minutes a day, and allow myself to just take information in directly from the cosmos, divine, spiritual, cosmic energy. And the other meditation I do is a manifestation meditation, where I'm focusing on, because obviously I run a lot of things, and those things take a lot of energy and thought processing. So I do my manifestation meditation to manifest my goals in each thing that I'm involved in, and to manifest that everything works out in my favor, and that all my goals are accomplished. So I do my manifestation meditation where I walk through each goal being actually accomplished in my mind, because I think this is more real than what's out there. And when this is in alignment, everything out here happens. So I focus on those things there. And of course, plant-based eating. Not everybody can eat plant-based. I want to make this clear. I have two friends now that I've come in contact with, they've become close friends. One of them is allergic to all vegetables except for, all vegetables and all fruits except for peaches and pineapples. And he's an NFL player, okay? He can only eat, he eats mostly chicken, goat, and he loves pineapple bowls. Like we like acai bowls, he likes the pineapple bowl, made the same way. Anything else that he eats, he's gonna have an anaphylactic shock and he's gonna go to the hospital, potentially die. He has to go around, he has to drive around with an EpiPen. The other person, very similar situation. So not everybody can go plant-based, but if you can, increase the amount of positive, high energy foods that you can bring in, raw foods, high energy foods. Try to take that into your body. Try to decrease the amount of meat you're eating and increase the positive energy foods so that you can give yourself the best chance if you're able to do it health-wise. A combination of those things and doing things that make you happy, getting grounded, going out in nature. I try to walk on the beach. You know, I try to, when I walk on the beach, there's trees. I try to touch each tree as I walk down the sidewalk just to connect directly with nature on a physical level. You know, little things like that. And staying focused and just trying to see if you can, what service you can be to others, trying to help other people, be the change instead of consistently complaining. Try to be the change. Yes, we have to talk about these other negative things. We have to expose some of them. At the same time, there's a balance that's required in all things. Too much excess of anything is detrimental to your health.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, to kind of add on to what you're saying, I've actually felt the same way too. And I witnessed the time that you said that where you were getting a little angsty, and I saw a couple of posts. I'm like, that's not like Billy.
Yeah.
But it happened to me, man, hardcore too. And you know, there's just I don't even want to get into the political game, but just the division of it is so hardcore. And then doing what I do and working with so many people that have different beliefs, that other people cannot reach because they are not reachable, but I am reachable, you know?
Yeah.
So I get the brunt of a lot of arguments for the speakers. And it is driving me crazy to the point that I literally, multiple reasons, but I literally just picked up and drove to Michigan through 16 states in the last 2 weeks with my wife, and went to a lake house there. And literally, I had no time to talk about the news because I was driving 10 hours a day for 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
So it was getting to me. And then when I had all that time, 10 hours a day, literally driving, I was thinking, and I was coming up with a detox plan of social media and the internet, because everything I do is online and the internet. So I needed to have that presence. But even someone that is so involved in the online world, I have now come up with some boundaries where I'm disconnecting, I'm deleting certain apps. I'm going to only work 6 hours a day up until the end of the year. Because a lot of people have time to focus, but when you have so much time in your hand, you might concentrate on the news and the media, and then you're inundated with all this negativity. And now that you have all this time, you've kind of switched it out with complete BS, really, that's kind of making you feel bad about yourself. But you actually have the time to do the opposite of that, right? So what you touched on is that there are many types of meditation, right? Vegan is not for everybody. Everybody can do whatever they want, but you have 2 different types of meditation. We're so beautiful, so amazing that there's literally 7.5 billion different types of meditation that we can do on this planet. So it's whatever really is good for you. Wouldn't you agree?
Exactly. Yep, absolutely. 1000%, man. And you know, one thing too, I like to tell people, I know that we're in a situation in this country, if you're in America, maybe even in most countries, we're run by a political system, even though we're supposed to be in control of the political system because they're supposed to work for us. It almost seems as if we're letting them control us. I would recommend that people unplug a little bit from politics, just like you have to unplug from social media. Unplug from politics too, because it could drive you crazy. It'll have you doing things and saying things and reacting to people in ways that you didn't think and nobody thought would even be inside of you. It can turn you into an absolute animal. So I think to withdraw a little bit from politics will help a lot of people feel better, improve their health, improve their relationship with their spouses, and even with their children.
Yeah, you can have, and that doesn't mean you need to let go of your beliefs. You can have your beliefs and still disconnect and not engage all the time. Right?
Exactly.
Like if you know that you have this belief, but then when you're focusing on it all the time, you're feeling negative, have your belief, just do things that make you feel good as well. Right?
Exactly. I agree.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, brother. Why don't you close us out here with some final words and also let us know what's coming up for you.
Okay. Well, I want to tell everybody that's watching this, first of all, thank you for tuning in. Thanks for taking the time, the energy, and effort to look at something like this, to be a part of Portal to Ascension, because Portal to Ascension is doing things to help raise humanity's consciousness. That's all its focus is about. And I've been involved now with Neil for a few years, and I'm very excited about the path this whole thing is going in and where it can take people to mentally and consciously. And I want to just say, focus on positivity as much as possible, including myself. I'm even working on this on a daily basis. There's always a time where we're going to stumble and fall, including me. We're all working on this together. But we have to begin to, including me, create a filter, like a filter that we can, a thought filter. Before we respond or react to some information that we see on social media, why don't we run that through a filter first and say, is this even worth the effort or the energy for me to dive into this? Is this worth the effort for me to respond to this? Is this worth the effort for me to respond negatively to some information that I just may not particularly agree with? I think by running that filter a little bit more and controlling ourselves, controlling our emotions on what we indulge in on social media, whether it's something you agree with or not, will give you a little bit more peace in your life. And if there's some people that are putting information that you totally never really agree with, I think that you should mute them or block them so that you don't have to see it anymore. Okay, it's time to take back your peace. Take back your tranquility. Bring the tranquility back into the house. Because when it's affecting you like this, to the point where you're getting so agitated and so angry online and social media, it then will trickle down back into your family life as well. And other people will start to feel the brunt of that anger and that frustration, and it can bring stress to the entire household. So try to create your own filter, whatever that is, and try to reduce the amount of negativity that you feel you need to put out. Focus on just positive affirmations and positive things. If it's getting to a point where it's always a fight on a daily, you shouldn't have to fight every single day on social media. Other than that, I am on Forbidden Knowledge TV. I have a new TV network called Forbidden Knowledge TV with the number 4. and you can go to 4BK, number 4BK.tv, and register for a free 3-day trial. You can also look on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, and of course, iOS apps and Android apps for Forbidden Knowledge TV. It's a 5-star app. Thousands of people are on there now, and there's over 2,000 programs up there right now. Great, incredible, conscious content you can share with the entire family.